if you saw the thumbnail, I had the comment about $1.9 million in sales. So I'm going to share my screen here. And what I was talking about was the big signature heritage auction that happened what going on maybe a week and a half ago now, 2 weeks ago now. So one of the things I thought I would talk about here was kind of like how those big books did in this sale. So I believe there were 16 books that sold in that big signature heritage comic auction, and their total sales numbers were $1,924,800. And my estimates for those 16 books totaled $1,987,000. So really, like, for books of this caliber, books that don't sell this often, books that are this expensive, that turned out to be pretty close. I'm pretty happy with how my estimates ended up being. I was a little bit high, but just a little over 3% high. And so for all of that, I'd say that was pretty close on what I thought these were going to do. But there were definitely some books that really overperformed and some books that underperformed. There were definitely, even in those big first 16 books, some books that I felt went for some pretty good deals. And so I'll just kind of start from the top here. So the first one was this Action Comics #1. And this is a 0.5. I've talked about this book before. A number of people have talked about this book. And you can see it's missing the back cover. So there's no back cover. That is why it's a 0.5. I mean, it's also just a low grade book. Even if the back cover was there, this might get a 1, but would probably have a decent, it would be somewhere between a 0.5 and a 1, regardless whether it had that back cover or not. Now, I had this book estimated at $325,000. So the way I went through my estimates, I went back and I watched that video that I went through and did all the estimates for them. And if I gave a range, I picked the number in the middle. And there were a couple books I didn't talk about, so I took care of those after the fact. But I think I had said this one I thought would go for 300 to 350, ended up going for 408,000. So I said that my estimate was 325,000. So it went for 26% over my estimate. I mean, this was a strong sale, but to me, this wasn't a surprising sale because, I mean, it's Action Comics #1. I mean, there's going to be a lot of interest at this level because this is just basically what it costs to get into this book now. We now know, like, the bare minimum. If you want a copy of this book that at least has the front cover, you're going to pay almost $500,000. I mean, $408,000 for this book. And yeah, I mean, it's a lot of money, but when you've got just a little bit higher grades, like a 3.0 going for multiple millions of dollars, it's not a surprise. It's very similar to what you see with like Amazing Fantasy 15, where to get into a 0.5, it's a really high barrier of entry. And so it might cost you 12, 13,000, something like that to get a 0.5, but then you could get a 2.0 for maybe 20,000 or 19,000. And so you have that really high barrier just to get the copy. And then you tend to have a kind of a dip in the price per point. And then you have it climb up again as the books get higher and higher in grade. But then let's take a look at the next book. So the next book, this one I actually didn't price in the live stream, so I priced it afterwards. This is Action Comics #4. And so this, I believe, it's probably just the 4th appearance. Yeah. So 4th appearance of Superman. And so this one I had going for 25,000, went for 24,000. So really within, any type of range that you could expect, like that went for right around what I thought it would go for. So no big surprises there. Now, there were some questions about some of these early Action Comics in one of the other streams that I did. And yeah, it's just when they don't have Superman on the cover, they just don't get the attention. I mean, if this has Superman on the cover, probably goes for $300,000, something like that, 400,000. But without Superman on the cover, just on the interior, $24,000. Because the question was about the first appearance of Jimmy Olsen and why that one goes for so little, and it's because it doesn't have Superman on that cover. But yeah, so this one went right around where I thought it would. So this one was All Winners #21, and you'll see a couple things about this one. It has this Feed Store Collection stamp on it. And so that's really kind of, I call them like, I don't know, it's kind of like a made up pedigree or just something like that. It's a collection from somebody who had these books and they are selling them all through Heritage, and Heritage will put these kind of like little stickers on them. And this one they called the Feed Store Collection. I don't know the history behind it, but I do think I remember seeing somebody posting about it on the comic book collecting subreddit, like as they were finding these books and asking how they should handle them. I think that's where the first time I think I heard about these books. But there are a lot of books in this auction from this Feed Store collection. And this is a very high grade book, all winners, number 21 and a 9.4. I had this one going for 27,500, went for 26,400. I mean, within 4%, right in range there for this book. So it was definitely kind of like right in line for what I was expecting with it. I mean, it's a cool book. It's a really high grade for, the 1940s, 1947. But, for me, like, it's not a Schomburg cover, which is one thing that a lot of people are looking for. It's post World War II, which is kind of something that takes away from a little bit. And so it's not a book that I personally would be chasing after, but still, like, anytime you get something that's near mint in this type of era, it's pretty impressive. Now, one other thing you'll notice, because it's something that I think a lot of people really get hung up on, is that this has a dust shadow on it. It's a 9.4 with a dust shadow. Because I will have people constantly, they'll ask me about my thoughts on the Promise collection. And it's because a lot of the Promise collection books had dust shadows. And if you're not familiar with the Golden Age, you can have dust shadows on very high grade books. And like, there are even mile high books that are 9/8 that have dust shadows on them. And so, yeah, there are some where you might say, like, it feels like maybe it should have been a 9.4 instead of a 9.6, or 9.4 instead of a 9.8 or something like that. But in general, because I've had people ask me, like I said, I've had people ask me about this, so I want to touch on it. I am completely fine with those Promise Collection books. There are always going to be outliers. There's going to be books where people disagree and have, differences of opinion on grading. But I mean, I've had not quite a few, but I've probably had maybe 5 or 6 Promise Collection books, and they've just been stunning, just incredible looking books. So I don't know. That's my take on it. I mean, Golden Age grading, like, it is a little different than the other eras. Like, some people think that Golden Age grading is exactly the same as silver and bronze and modern, and it is not. Things are graded a little bit differently there. All right, let's go to the next one here. So next one, this was a big book. So this Amazing Fantasy 15 went for $75,000, and I had estimated it at $75,000. So 6.0 went for exactly what I thought it would. It had a high sale of, I believe, 96,000, but there were some other grades that sold much higher than that, kind of around it. So this was a really nice looking copy. I wouldn't have been surprised if it had gone for a little bit more, but I mean, it went for what I thought. So I mean, I talked about this a little bit in a prior video. I mean, it has a little bit of what you call pre-Marvel chipping. It's like Marvel tears, I think they call it now. But it has very little Marvel chipping. And this book is known for Marvel chipping. It's just one of those books that just tends to have it quite a bit on this right edge. And there's just very little, just a couple little tears on it. And so this is a really beautiful copy. I mean, this is a stunning copy of Amazing Fantasy 15. All right. Let's go to the next one here. So this was one of the books that I felt like went for a deal. This one seemed cheap to me. So this is obviously Avengers number 4, first Silver Age appearance of Captain America, a 9.8, $132,000. Now, I thought that this book was going to go for $200,000. I mean, the prior high was quite a bit lower. The prior record was $143,400. But I mean, when you looked at the prices of this book versus other grades, when that book had sold for 143,000 or whatever versus what it was selling for now, I mean, this book's just staying flat. I mean, it was a surprise. I was not expecting this. I think whoever picked this one up got it for a good deal. I mean, it's a good looking book. It's a white page, 9.8. I don't know what else you can want from this copy, but yeah, I just think that one went low. In my opinion, I think that if I was the seller of that book, I would have been disappointed in this sale. This is one of the 2 sales that were in this opening 16 books that if I was a seller of that book, I would have been disappointed. And I mean, you'd have to think that, like, if you go back, I mean, let's take a look at GPA. So Avengers number 4. So with Avengers number 4, we go to a 9.8, and one hadn't sold since 2017. And in that 2017 sale, it sold for 143,000. A lot has happened in the comic market since 2017. I mean, for that book to sell for less, and I think Mickey might have talked about this book on his channel. I don't even think this was white pages. Yeah. So I always kind of joke because like I'm not a person that really cares about page quality at all. And so I always think it's kind of funny when you see stuff like this, because you have some people that will just like push like page quality and think that it's like the most important thing out there. And then you see this and you go, okay, 6 years ago, a 9.8 off white to white sold for more than the current 9.8 white page copy that sold. So the record is for an off white to white page copy. But yeah, I mean, that's just like when you look at, like, let's look at this, like 2017, let's go to a 9.2. I mean, you go back to 2017, a 9.2 was a $7,000 book. Even like corrected prices, it's a $10,000 book. It's 50% more. That's how I kind of got to my number. That's how I approached that number of 200,000. I looked at multiple grades, and in that time period, multiple books were up around 50%. And so I was like, okay, I expected something similar for the 9.8, and we just didn't see it. And so I personally think that was a good deal on that book. Right. Let's move on to the next one. So next book here, this was one that I felt like was a pretty good deal. This wasn't one of those top tier deals like the minus 30% or 30% below, but I still felt like this was a pretty good deal for this book. This is, Batman number 1, first appearance of the Joker, first appearance of Catwoman. I mean, two of the biggest characters in comics, their first appearances here. And 3.5 for $228,000. I had this going for $265,000. So this is 14% below what I thought it would go for. And I know Mickey has talked about this as well on his channel. It feels like there is maybe a little bit of fatigue for Batman number 1. We have seen so many copies of Batman number 1 come up for sale in the last year or so. I mean, so let's take a look at this. And this is Go Collect. This is one of the other tools that I like to use for this, for pricing. And one of the nice things just with Go Collect is I can just see all the sales back to back real easily. And just look at this. Just in 2023, it goes off the first page. All of these, 2023 for Batman number 1. I mean, this is a golden age book. This is an early golden age book. I mean, let's see how many pages we have to go. Okay, so I think there's 10, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So just public sales. There have been 13 sales of Batman number 1 just this year, and it's September. I mean, that to me is just crazy. And then let's go to 2022. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 sales in 2022. That is 28 sales in the last year and 9 months. That, I don't know, like that is a ton of books for something that has a total number of copies out there of 302 on census. And so it's given this feeling like to me, it's just, there's too many of them coming out. And I do think that will probably slow down after a little bit. I know Mickey he's been saying that he thinks maybe a lot of dealers had picked them up, and so that's why we're getting those coming up for sale now. But yeah, I mean, it's such a cool book. It is a great cover, 2 incredible first appearances, and a number 1 from 1940 for a character that is still extremely relevant today. And we've just been seeing so many copies changing hands that. I mean, if I was selling one, I'd probably hold on to it for a little bit right now. Let things calm down some with the Batman number 1s, because it just seems like every major auction that I watch, whether that's Comic Link, Comic Connect, or Heritage, they're big ones, like they're signature type auctions. I see Batman number 1, come up for sale. This auction had 3 of them. I mean, there were 3, and so I'm guessing they should all be here. So. Let's take a look at that. Because yeah, we had the 3.5, we had a 1.8, and we had one that was missing the front cover as a 0.5. I mean, just this one auction, we had 3 copies come up for sale. And so that type of thing just, I don't know, it has made me less interested in the book. It's weird, but like just seeing it sell so much, it just gives this feeling like nobody wants it. You know? So like people just keep trying to flip it or something like that. So if I was selling it, I'd be holding on for a little while right now, just to hopefully let things calm down in that market a little bit. But all right, so on to the next one. All right, this is a great book. This one sold for just about exactly what I thought it would. It was actually a record. Prior record for a 2.0 for Captain America Comics #1 was $90,000. So 114,000 is a new record. I had it going for 115,000. So it went for 1,000 under my estimate. So basically right on with that estimate. I mean, this would be a cool book to own. I mean, it does feel like this one is not quite the tier of like Action 1 or Tech 27. I mean, it's first appearance of Captain America. He's on the cover. He's punching Hitler in the face. I mean, it has pretty much everything you would want for it. It is a little bit later than those other ones, though. That could be the thing that is a little bit of what drops it slightly, is that it's 1941. Versus the 30s for Tech 27 and Action Comics #1. But I mean, maybe it's not quite at that tier, but it is about as close as you can get. And so, I mean, you're talking $50,000 to $60,000 per point down at this type of grade. So, I mean, yeah, cool book. Went for almost exactly what I thought it would. I always like seeing these ones come up for sale because it would be cool to own. It would definitely be a cool book to own. I've talked about it before. I would probably more be targeting something like Captain America 3. I think that one is something that could eventually be a book that I could get in my budget. This book is outside of that any known budget that I have right now. So it's just a cool book to see come up for sale, and one that and this one looks nice. I mean, this is a really, really nice looking 2.0. Yeah, Crazy for Comics says Captain America doesn't have as much demand outside of the States. Yeah, I believe that. I totally believe that characters like Spider-Man, Batman, Superman, maybe a little more universal than Captain America. All right. Next one. This was the other book that I felt went for a big steal. This one, now, one of the things that probably did hurt it some. I know some people said maybe the stamps, but I mean, with Action Comics 1, you've got the Rocket copy. Like that is that Rocket stamp on there. People love that stamp on this. I think these are pretty cool stamps. I don't have any problem with these like anchor stamps on there. I think they're cool. They don't really deter and take anything away from the book for me. But the thing that probably really hurt this book was the page quality in this case. And I know I was talking about page quality before, but when you're selling a book, especially on Heritage, I've noticed page quality can kill a book on Heritage. Other places, page quality doesn't seem to matter nearly as much, but on Heritage, it seems there just seems to be a little more pickiness about that page quality. And so that, I think, definitely played a role in what this one ended up selling for, because I had this book estimated at $125,000 and it went for $81,000. This actually went for below the prior record, the prior high sale, which was $102,000. I mean, this went $21,000 below that. And so this was, to me, I felt like this was like a 35% discount for this book. I mean, this is the third appearance of Batman. This is the second cover appearance. And I know a lot of people like this cover appearance a lot more than the Tech 27 cover appearance. And I would agree. I think this version of Batman, the way he's drawn here, he just looks more menacing than in Tech 27. Tech 27 just still feels, I mean, it's the first time you see him, right? So it still feels unpolished. This feels a little bit more polished. They've had a little more time drawing the character and the interiors as well. And so you get, just I feel like a better looking version of Batman on this cover. And it's a cool action cover, coming through the window. And yeah, so I think whoever bought this one got it for a great price. I mean, I think that this one just went way lower than what I would have thought it should have gone for third appearance of Batman, especially since like Tech 27 and Action 1, those books are still going through the roof. And so, and a lot of the other tech books, like a lot of other early tech books are just hitting record after record after record. And so to me, this was a big surprise to see this one going for the price that it did. All right. Next one here. So now we have, I think, no, this is the second Silver Age book. So we had the, or no, third, because we had the Amazing Fantasy 15, we have Avengers number 4, and now we have Incredible Hulk number 1 in a 7.5, going for $84,000. I had this one going for 80, so just around what I had it going for. Its record was $108,100, so not quite its record, but that's not a surprise to me. I mean, a lot of these books hit their records in the, in the comic boom period, 2021, 2022. And so, this is a strong sale for this book. This is another one that very often has that Marvel chipping over here. And this is an incredible looking copy. I mean, there's a crease up here that seems like and some creases on the top, and then a little bit of spine wear. I mean, otherwise, just, amazing looking copy of this book. Really, really impressive book, and a solid sale. Here's that. I had it going for 80, went for 84,000. All right. Next one here. This is one that I didn't even talk about this book in in my live stream. I didn't understand why this book was in this opening set of 16 books. There were so many other just massive books that came up in the later part of the auction. I mean, yeah, I get it. It's a 9.6 from 1942. It's a Mile High pedigree, but I mean, it's Joker Comics number 1. Like, I think it's the first appearance of Powerhouse Pepper, I think. Is that what it is? Yeah, first appearance of Power. Like, I mean, this guy down here, like a character that nobody cares about anymore. I mean, maybe there's like 10 people on the planet that care about Powerhouse Pepper. And so, like, to see this one in that opening set of 16 was just a surprise to me. And this sale was an even bigger surprise. I mean, $19,200 for this book. Like, I had this one, let's see, I had this one going for $12,000. And even that, I was like, man, is it really going to go for 12,000? I was like, maybe I'm even putting like too much into this book. And because, I mean, let's take a look at this one. Joker Comics number 1. So 1942. And so, I mean, yeah, you've got like a 6.5 going for 1,800, 3.0 going for $420, then nothing really selling in these like kind of like upper grades here. And then 9.6, $19,000. I don't get it. Like, I'm sure someone is happy with it, but I mean, yeah, colors are great and everything, but it's like, I mean, it's a dead character, and it's just not something that if I was spending 20 grand, I mean, maybe that's the thing. Like, maybe this person has $1 billion or $100 million, and so it doesn't matter to them. But yeah, if I was spending 20 grand, I would be targeting something else. But yeah, that one was the biggest surprise to me. It went 60% over what I thought it was. Now, granted, that was a guess. That, I mean, you saw the sales there. It's not like this is an easy book to guess what this is going to sell for, but I wasn't expecting that. All right, this one here. This was a pretty solid sale. So this is More Fun number 73. This is a big DC key. This is the first appearance of Aquaman, first appearance of Green Arrow, and the first appearance of Speedy. So triple first appearance in the Golden Age, old Golden Age. I mean, 1941. Unfortunately, none of them are on the cover. None of them are on the cover of their second appearance either. That hurts things a little bit, but it's still a pretty cool cover. So you at least have that going for it. Now, I had this one going for $117,500. So it went a little bit below what I thought it would. I think that means I probably had it from 115 to 120 is probably what I said in that prior video. So it had 117,500. I mean, within 3%, but its prior record was 72,000. So, I mean, hitting a new record, and just a rare book. I mean, like, how many are on census for this thing? Let's see. Only 38 universal copies. Like, these More Fun books are extremely difficult. I mean, these books, this run itself, you just don't come across them very often. And, it's a cool book. I mean, it is one of those things where not having them on the cover definitely is a negative, but I mean, I had, let's see, I think someone sent me a picture of an interior, and like, Aquaman looks pretty cool on the interior of these. Like, it feels like a pretty well fleshed out character already, almost at that point, which is always impressive when you have them, just showing up here. I talked about that with Pep Comics number 23, the second appearance of Archie. Like, the story in there with Archie is already really well done, and that's only his second appearance. So Pretty impressive how they came up and thought out these characters, as quickly as they did, and put together some really solid stories for them. So this is one of the marquee books for the sale. This is Punch Comics number 12. An 8.0. I talked about this one in one of my prior videos, in that I wasn't sure exactly if there are some things that might hurt it, because it is the top of census. And 8.0 is the best known copy out there. There's also the Crowley copy pedigree. So it's a pedigree, it's highest copy on census, single highest copy on census. And I mean, it's a really nice looking book. The only real negative, or like that you could even really give to it, is that the skull on this one is kind of yellowed. It's not as white as what you see with a lot of the other copies that I've seen of Punch Comics number 12. So I thought that might hurt a little bit, but it went for almost exactly what I thought. I had it going for 200,000, went for 204,000. Now, I will say, it seemed like I talked to some people, and it seemed like this one maybe had gotten stuck at some lower numbers, and they, the auctioneer like kept working on it, kept working it, and those bids started coming back in, and it started catching some more bids. So there are some of these books, it seems, like even with big books like this, like sometimes you got to work the crowd a little bit to get those numbers. And but yeah, sold for right around what I thought it would, 204,000. And there were some comments on Instagram that I thought were interesting about this book, and the question was, did this go low? And so, like I said, I thought 200,000 seemed reasonable, so I didn't think it went low. But it was, there were comparisons to things like Amazing Fantasy 15, and like what would it be, like a 7.5 around that or something, or comparisons to that Action 1 and a 0.5 going for double this. And my personal takeaway, my thought on this is that those characters, Spider-Man, Superman, and you're talking about Tech 27, Batman, they are much more well-known characters. Like if you went to almost any part of we'll say the industrialized world, like people that have access to social media, have access to, movies and that type of content, they're going to know who Superman is, who Batman is, who Spider-Man is. The only people that really know what this cover is comic collectors. And it's not just comic collectors. It is a subset of comic collectors. It is largely Golden Age collectors. Like for me, before I got into Golden Age comics, around 3.5 years ago or so, I didn't even know what this cover was. I was not familiar with it. I remember the first time I saw it, I was like, that is an awesome comic. I would like to own one of those, but I wasn't familiar with it. And, I'm someone that I've seen all the, Marvel movies. I watch all the content. I do, I collected comics as a younger kid, and I had no idea what this was. And so to me, that's one of those things that really is one of the, what I think holds back certain books like this, is that they are for a smaller subset of collectors. They just don't have that big collector base that are going to drive the value for it. That's my take on it. So let's move on to the next one here. All right. So the next one, so not a book you come across very often in 9.8. Now this one was off-white to white pages. In 9.8, off-white to white pages, you can have 9.8s with, I think, up to off-white. I don't think you can have creamed off-white in a 9.8, but I think I'm pretty certain you can have off-white. A 9.8, which is just a crazy grade for this book. Now, I did talk about this one in that in my prior video when I talked about this auction, when this auction was coming up, and I said I would not buy this book. This book, the prices on it scared me for how much they had gone up. And usually when these books come back up for sale, and you start getting corrections, it doesn't all correct at once. You need multiple sales. And so I felt like, based on where this book had been, that this is much more of like a $30,000, $25,000 to $30,000 book, is what I think I said there. And so this one had a peak sale of, let's see here, 90,000. So it did correct 24,000 in this, but I could see it correcting more. And I'll kind of show you what I'm talking about here. So we have Silver Surfer number 4, 9.8, and they've come up for sale every once in a while, and almost yearly you get at least one copy. These years you had four copies coming for sale. It's like, look at this. 2004, 6,000, 2015 still only going for like 8,000, 7,000 to 8,000. 2017, 6 years ago, around 10,000. 2019, 16,800. Then all of a sudden, 90,000. It jumped up more than 5x, between 5 and 6x. Like, and I was talking about that in that video. I'm like, this is a terrifying number to see to me. Like what we've seen with every other book basically is that they're all returning back down to these like trend lines that they were following before. And this one has a long ways to drop before it gets down to that trend line. And so this was a book that, I mean, I knew it would go for something more like this, which is why I estimated it at 60. And that's because we had a 9.6. Oh man, that was a big correction. But we had a 9.6, that had sold for like this year. You had 11,400, then 30,000, then 28,000, then 14,000. I mean, you've got these books just like jumping all over the place. And like this type of activity, like to me, these bottom points are probably around where this book should be selling. Maybe even those are even a little high. These top points they're nuts. And so I would be very, very cautious with this book right now. Anytime you see something like that, where you still have a huge gap between where this book was selling and where it's selling now, just be wary. It's not a guarantee that the book's going to drop. There's no guarantee that that's going to drop. It could stay up there. It could be a new baseline for the book, but that type of stuff worries me. And that's not a risk that I would ever really want to take. All right, let's move on to the next one here. So yeah, I mean, it went for 10% over what I thought, but I just, this book, like I said, scares me for the prices it's going for. All right, then we had this one here. This is a cool book too. Submariner #1. I mean, number ones, I always like number ones. Number ones are just interesting extra that you get, with a book. Now, this one went for right around what I thought too. A little weak, but hardly at all. I had it going for 57,500, went for 55,200. So within 4%. So again, like when I see sales like that, I mean, when you're talking about books that sell hardly ever and you're, really big numbers like that, being within a few percentage points is close enough. But yeah, I mean, Submariner #1, I can almost guarantee this is an Alex Schomburg cover. Let's see here. Yeah, covered by Alex Schomburg. He has this way of drawing, like Submariner especially, and Human Torch, where he makes them really large on the page. In this case, like the size of a submarine. And so I always think that looks really cool. So, but a yellow cover, golden age yellow cover, a high grade 7.5, and I mean, yeah, went for right around what I thought it would go for. Another one that we've been seeing pop up for sale a lot. So, I mean, very similar to Batman #1, Superman #1. We've been seeing Superman #1 pop up quite a bit. And a lot of them are these lower grades. I mean, they're like 1.0s, 1.5s, 1.8s. It's a nice looking 1.5. It's a white pages copy. I believe this one has like a coupon cutout. Yeah, coupon missing from centerfold. I wouldn't be surprised if it has something like, spine splits as well. So yeah, 7.5 inch of spine splits, coupon missing, detached cover. I mean, that's a pretty standard for a 1.5. It's about what you would expect for 1.5. You could maybe think a 1.8 could possibly be what this one could get. I mean, especially because it's just such a nice looking copy. I mean, it's a great looking copy of this book, but went for $174,000. I had this one going for $165,000. Record was 192, so not quite a record, but to me, a pretty strong sale. Solid sale, 5% over my estimate. Again, that's right in range. I mean, like I talked about with Submariner 1, went a little bit below. This one went a little bit above. So I think this is a solid sale for this book, and I'm sure whoever got it is happy with adding this one. All right. Then the last one that sold in this big signature auction was a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #1. This was also one of the weaker sales. It wasn't, again, not like 30% low or anything, but I had this one going, I think I said 135 to 140 in the prior video I did. So I said that this was 137,500. So that's the average of those two, and went for 120,000. Now it's low, but it's not really surprising because this book got, really, really expensive when during the comic boom. I mean, it almost touched $250,000. There might have been a sale that hit $250,000 that didn't get pulled into GPA, like a Comic Link sale or something. But I think it was like 243 or 245 was the highest publicly recorded sale. And it's just been gradually trending down since then until it's going to, get back into whatever its trend line is. But I mean, yeah, like this is similar. Like, look at this book. Like, it was going for 38,000 back in 2018, then 50,000 on the low end in 2019, but then all of a sudden a $90,000 sale. I remember, I think I was watching, it was like Comic Tom or something, and like Golden Age Guru was on, Jeff, and he was talking about this $90,000 sale, like how shocking that sale was. Like that was a huge, huge number in 2019. And then it proceeded, to do the whole comic boom thing and went up to 245,000. I mean, from what it was 3 years ago, 6 or 7, what would that be? 8 times? Let me see my math right here. 7 times, 6 times. Went for about 6 times what it went, 3 years prior. And so anytime we saw that, like those numbers just aren't sustainable. And so I wouldn't be surprised if this one, keeps trending down a little bit over the next, couple years. But the 9.8s don't come up for sale all that often. I mean, you can see here, 1 or 2 times a year. And so it takes a while for those corrections to come into place. And what may happen is that it may actually eventually overlap with whatever this trend line was, and then it just won't drop anymore. It's back on the trend line, even though it didn't go back to those 2020 or whatever type prices. It got back to the trend from where it was in 2020. But yeah, so I mean, the total for all these sales was $1,924,800 for those 16 books. And then, I had estimated at $1,987,000. So I went for, I felt like it was a solid auction. Like it was a solid auction. Things generally went for around what I expected them to. And similar on the other days that we had these books. They had, these auctions are huge. There are tons of books that are selling in these auctions. And I just generally felt that sales were pretty strong.